Mosses are non-vascular plants that do not have flowers or seeds. These simple plants typically grow in damp areas such as forests or wetlands. You may have seen large patches of moss growing on a tree, rock, or even on the forest floor. While we may think of mosses as small, forgettable plants, they actually serve several vital roles. For example, peat moss can be used as a fuel, carbon sink, and habitat for many unique organisms. You may also see moss used in flower arrangements or hanging flower baskets. Mosses are also useful to many ecosystems because they can survive very high or low temperatures and can even help make soil. As for the life cycle of these plants, mosses are unique because they spend most of their lives with only one set of genetic material rather than the normal two sets. This would be like living the majority of your life cycle with only half of your genetic information. Now that we know a little bit about these non-vascular plants, let's quickly review the concept of alternation of generations before looking at this process in mosses. Alternation of generations is a life cycle that includes both diploid and haploid multicellular stages. Remember that diploid means two sets of chromosomes and is commonly abbreviated as 2N, where the N stands for the chromosomes. In diploid cells, one copy of the chromosomes comes from each parent. For example, in humans, you get one copy of chromosomes from your dad and one copy of chromosomes from your mom. The same idea is found in plants. Each diploid cell contains one copy of chromosomes from the male parent and one copy of chromosomes from the female parent. Haploid means one set of chromosomes and is commonly abbreviated as N because there's only one copy of the chromosomes. Let's look at a diagram of the basic idea of alternation of generations. We can see in this diagram that the life cycle is broken into N on the top and 2N on the bottom. In plants, the gametophyte is N and the sporophyte is 2N. Previously, we used the garb links to illustrate the oddity of this. Remember that the diploid or 2N organism looks like this. However, when it moves into the haploid stage, the garb link looks completely different. Two of these haploid organisms will get together and mate in order to produce a new 2N organism that looks similar to our first garb links. This garb links will then eventually produce a new haploid organism, and so on. Now that we have a good review of the basics of alternation of generations, let's look at how this process is completed in mosses. Unlike more advanced plants, mosses have a dominant haploid life stage. That is, the moss that you see is the gametophyte and only contains one set rather than the normal two sets of chromosomes. The haploid stage starts with a spore. This can either be a male or female spore. The male spore will develop into a mature gametophyte that contains structures to make male gametes. These antheridia are structures in male gametophytes that produce and release sperm. In female gametophytes, there are structures to make female gametes. These archegonia are structures in female gametophytes that produce eggs. Unlike the male antheridia, the female archegonia do not release the gametes that are produced. Additionally, antheridia will produce many sperm at the same time, while each archegonium will produce one egg. The gametophyte, whether it is male or female, carries out most of the life processes for the moss plant. It is anchored to the ground by rhizodes, which are less complex than roots found in vascular plants. This haploid stage is capable of photosynthesis and supports the life functions of the plant. The diploid stage begins following fertilization. Sperm are released from the antheridia and swim using flagella into a female archegonia. Once the haploid egg and sperm fuse, there is now a zygote. This new diploid cell will divide through mitosis to eventually become a mature sporophyte. Keep in mind that the sporophyte is dependent upon the gametophyte for nutrition and support. The sporophyte actually grows within the archegonia. It will develop a foot that attaches to the gametophyte. A stalk will then grow out of the archegonia. At the end, a round capsule may be seen. The entire sporophyte structure can be seen here, sticking out of the top of the dominant haploid stage. The capsule contains sporangium, which produces spores. Within the sporangium are specific cells, sporocytes, which undergo meiosis to produce haploid spores. These spores are then released and will eventually become either a male or a female gametophyte, continuing the life cycle. Mosses are non-vascular plants that are small and live in close groups, mostly in damp environments. Unlike more advanced plants, mosses have a dominant haploid stage. Moss gametophytes are generally either male or female. Male gametophytes contain antheridia, which produce and release male gametes, sperm. Female gametophytes contain archegonia, which produce the female gamete, eggs. The sperm are released from the antheridia and swim to the archegonia in order to fertilize the egg. This newly formed diploid sporophyte will grow within the archegonia eventually developing a foot that attaches to the gametophyte, a stalk, and a capsule that contains sporangium. Sporocytes within the sporangium undergo meiosis in order to create spores which are released to continue this alternation of generations.